Hey City of Coquitlam, welcome to Science for Children. This is our second lesson and our theme today is all about water. We all have it, and we all need it, but there's some really cool things that you can do for science that work with water as well. We're going to be testing a few different reactions today, and we have a total of 3 experiments to do. For our first experiment, the supplies you're going to need are 3 glass jars, like so, at least 2 colors of food coloring. I recommend primary colors, so today I'm going to be using blue and yellow, and paper towel. We only need a few sheets of this. For our second experiment, we're going to need another jar. We're going to reuse one from the first experiment with food coloring in it. We need instant rice. It's important to use instant rice as normal rice is going to be too dense for this. We're also going to be using white vinegar, baking soda, a tablespoon measuring, and water. For our third experiment, we're going to need a shallow dish filled with water, which we will fill later, scissors, plain paper. I'm using printer paper today, but you can use different types, and markers. Water-soluble markers will probably be the best for this one, but we can experiment a little bit. Let's get started on our first experiment here. This one is called the walking water experiment. So we're going to start with 3 jars. We're going to put water into the 2 outside jars. And you want to fill them all the way to the top. Now, we're going to add some food coloring. As I said, primary colors tend to work best for this, so I'm going to use blue and yellow. I'm going to start with 5 drops and see how that goes. Good, you can see that the blue is quite dark already. We're going to give it a quick stir. And now the yellow. I think I'm going to add a little bit more coloring, just maybe a couple more drops. Maybe a little extra to the yellow because it's such a light color. Again, let's give it a quick stir. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this paper towel. These ones are already cut into half sheets like so. We're going to take 2. We're going to take this paper towel sheet and fold it once, like this, and then one more time. So we've now folded it into 4 pieces. Like this. And we're going to do the same with the other one. So fold, and then fold again. You might have to press on your edges so that it stays closed. All right, so what do you think we're going to be doing with this middle jar here? Because it's empty right now, there's nothing in it. Let's think about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put one end of the paper towel in the blue with the other end into the empty jar. And then the same thing with the yellow, one end into the yellow and one end into the empty jar. What do you think is going to happen to this middle jar? Is it going to change? What about the colors? Do you think the colors have anything to do with it? Let's find out. So putting your paper towel all the way to the bottom. Make sure you move it nice and close. So we've sped up time a little bit here, as you can see from the time-lapse video, but ultimately this is what we want to end up with. We started with the yellow jar and the blue jar. The water used what's called capillary action, which means it sort of climbed up the paper towel and into this one. Eventually, all three jars will have the same amount of water in them because of the capillary action. As well, we can also look at color mixing. This is why we said at the beginning, primary colors tend to work best. This is my favorite combination because it shows up the most. So the blue mixing with the yellow makes an entirely new color, which is green. Did you know that? It's pretty cool, hey? So this one can take a little bit of time. If you're finding that your experiment is taking a long time for the water to travel, it could be the type of paper towel that you have. So if you have something else you can try, give that a shot. Otherwise, it's just a waiting game. It will happen eventually. Let's move on to our next experiment. So we're gonna move these to the side. We're actually gonna save the blue jar. Top it up a little bit. So, for this particular experiment, I'm using colored water because it's gonna make the rice show up a little bit better. So, I filled it up about 3/4 of the way. The next thing I'm gonna do is take my measuring spoon and I'm gonna measure in, I'm gonna measure in 1 tablespoon of baking soda. For any of our smaller kids who are watching, maybe 5 and under, this is a good time to get mom and dad to help you. So, I've got 1 tablespoon of baking soda, and I'm gonna put it into this mixture here. And we're gonna put the baking soda to the side. Then, after we give it a little bit of a stir, so it doesn't all sit on the bottom, we're gonna add in about 1/4 cup of rice. If you have your measuring spoon, you can actually use that too. This is fine. So we're gonna add in rice. I'm gonna do about 4 scoops. So we can see here that the rice is all on the bottom. What we're gonna see is what happens when we add the vinegar. What do you think is gonna happen? Is the rice gonna do anything? I don't know. Let's find out. So as of right now, our rice are sitting on the bottom in our blue container. Now, we're gonna start by adding the vinegar. So again, we're gonna take our tablespoon. Let's start by adding 1. Now, we noticed there was a little bit of a fizz there. But we're gonna add a little bit more. The last experiment that we're gonna do today is called blooming flowers. So for this one, we need the printer paper, a shallow dish, water, and some washable markers. So we'll start by making the flowers. You can make a few different ones. So if you want, you can actually trace a flower first before you cut if you don't feel super confident with your free hand. And you want to draw a flower something kind of like this. Very basic. The petals are quite big and round. And then we're going to cut this out. If scissors are a little bit tricky for you, you can definitely get mom and dad to help. Good. So I cut mine in layers, so I've got a few different flowers to work with here. So we're going to start with 1. And I'm going to pick some nice colors for our flowers. It does not matter what kind of pattern you do or how much time you take on this. In fact, if you don't want to color them, you don't have to at all, but it does create kind of a secondary reaction. All right, so this is my flower. I did a bunch of different colors because I kind of want to see what's going to happen here. So what we're going to do is you're going to fold in each of your petals. So you're going to fold the petal into the inside and kind of lightly press it down, just like that. Same thing with the other ones. Enough so that they're going to stay folded, but not so much that they're stiff. So at the end, it should look something like this. Now, we're gonna put it in the water. So So we're gonna pour some water in here. We don't need very much. About that much will do. And all we're gonna do is place our flour, the flat side down. And we're gonna see what happens. Now, if you can see already, the petals are already opening, just like how a flower blooms in the spring. That was so fast. We'll do another top-down shot for this one so that you can see from this point of view. Just gonna move it a little bit because it's getting a little bit stuck on the edges. But 4 out of 5 of the petals have already opened up all the way. And there goes number 5. So my flower quite quickly went from closed all the way to open. And if you chose to color your flower, if you leave it in here for a little bit of time, you might see that some of your colors start bleeding together or blending. And see, now my flower is completely flat. All right, we're gonna take a look at this experiment again from the top down. So I've colored my paper flower and I'm gonna fold the petals gently into the middle. Remember, you don't wanna make it super tight, just enough so that they stay folded. Just like so. Now, we're gonna put the petal in the water and we'll see what happens. So the reason why this happens is because paper is actually made up of small fibers. You may or may not know that paper comes from trees. So what that means by the fibers is that they can absorb water, which they do. And what happens when they absorb water is they swell up and they get really big, which causes the paper to expand. So this is what made our flower go from all crunched up like this to open and bloom quite quickly. An interesting experiment you can try as well is different types of paper. You can try construction paper, cardstock, tissue paper, and take a look and see how long each one goes for. Is it different? What if you use different kinds of colors? Do they blend better in the water? Lots of things that you can try. That brings us to the end of Science for Children water theme experiments today. We hope that you had a really great time and learned something new. Remember that science is everywhere. You just have to look for it. Until next time, bye.